and Health Resources and Services Administration.
Mario fue pintor más de 30 años. Cuando me dijo que se le estaban olvidando las cosas, fue difícil. Un día me dijeron que pintara el marco del lado por dentro y pinté el lado de afuera.
Yo le diría a la gente que le diga a su familia lo que está pasando con él.
Si algo se nota diferente, podría ser Alzheimer. Es momento de hablarlo. Visita alz.org/nuestras historias para saber más. Un mensaje de The Alzheimer's Association y The Ad Council.
Did you know that AmeriCorps programs improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement in Nebraska? For example, members serving with AmeriCorps programs like Partnership for Kids provide kids with the support they need to succeed in school and prepare for their dream career. Discover more about AmeriCorps programs making a difference in your community at serve.nebraska.gov. Paid for by Serve Nebraska, aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Hey, it's me, your cell phone. We need to talk about something serious. I know you love me. I know you like using me wherever you are, but I feel like this isn't working out when you're driving. I know you may think that it's possible to focus both on me and the road, but I just don't feel the same way. I think we should spend time away from each other when you're driving. It's for the best.
Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org, a message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Attention Nebraska sports fans, are you ready to take your skills to the next level? The Army National Guard is looking for leaders who are dedicated, driven, and ready to make a difference. Join us and gain invaluable experience while serving your country with a flexible schedule, competitive benefits, and a chance to build a strong future. Learn more at nationalguard.com/Nebraska. Live here, serve here. The Nebraska Army National Guard, guard the good life.
Live from the heart of Lincoln, America, welcome to Ticket Weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome into Ticket Weekends. Harrison Arens on the ones and twos as we carry it until we get to some more high school hoops. We got quite a bit of time here, though, so we'll carry it likely all the way up until 4:10, and then we should be back down there with Nick Sainer, Jay Foreman down there at the vault, continuing the call championship games throughout the course of this Saturday. And real quick, before we dive into anything else, let's just give the layout of the land of what it's looked like so far in state basketball and go through some of the champions that we've already announced this morning. So the first one, 11 a.m., we did have Lincoln Christian defeating Milford with a score of 49-42. And the road for that one, Lincoln Christian was the 1 seed, undefeated, 25-0. They faced North Bend, and then they would go ahead and face Gothenburg. And then, like I said, they make it to the championship, holding on to that undefeated record. Milford's road to the runner-up was playing number 6 Arlington. And then they had number 2 Minden, pulled off the upset there with pretty resoundingly as well, 67-61. But again, was not enough, only lost, but just about 5 points there, 49-42. Moving on to the next game of the day, we did have, if I can find I did miss the 9 a.m. game. That's where I'm going wrong here. So we did have earlier, the very first game this morning was Elm Creek in Pender. Pender wins that one, becoming the champion, 74-40. And then, of course, we had at 1 p.m. Millard West and West Side. Millard West wins that one at 70-44. Millard West ends the year with only 1 loss on the season. And, number 7, Omaha West Side. It was a tough finish, losing 70-44, but you give those guys a lot of credit, upsetting number 2 Millard North in that first game. Millard North was 22-3 on the year, but Omaha West Side pulling off the upset there. And then it continued for them. There they would go ahead and upset number 3 Bellevue East, who only had 4 losses on the year, and do so in a convincing fashion. They would actually win that one 47-35. And, in this last championship game that we called before we had chopping it up with Chubbs, it was kind of just like the game early on. Seemed to get away with them, maybe some frustration or just fouls. It just felt like a lot was going away from a team that was doing a lot of damage throughout this tournament with the 3-point ball. I think just struggling with that early on in that game made it really tough for them to climb back. A few times it looked like they were possibly going to put up a run, but in that second half, I believe the closest they got, it was maybe about 18 points. So again, Millard West is your Class A champion. And then, as I said before, your Class C1 champion, Lincoln Christian, and then your Class D1 champion, Pender. And we will still have plenty of games left. We still have Elkhorn Valley versus Oakland Craig, as well as Dorchester and FCSH later today. And that is that 8:15 game, the nightcap for today. So, like I said, we'll still have Nick Sainer, Jay Foreman calling those for you guys down there at the vault, but that is kind of the layout of the land. A few of the champions so far throughout this Saturday. And of course, be sure to stick around for the rest of today, but not only that, but next week as well, because we'll do the same thing with the boys state tournament in basketball as well. And Nick Sainer, Jay Foreman, once again, will be down there pretty much all day at the vault, giving you guys that coverage. And you can always join in 402-464-5685. You guys want to join in on the conversation. And that's where we're at with high school hoops as it sits. And of course, as I keep saying, we're going to keep this thing going throughout the day here. But on some other news, I did find it interesting. I shouldn't say interesting. I was happy to see it. But Levante David, he gets another 1-year deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as we're switching over talking NFL now. It's $10 million deal, 1 year, $9 million of it guaranteed. And this is great for him. I think that's 14 years now. He's been a Tampa Bay Buccaneer, and might be one of the most non-injury prone guys there is. Levante David is consistently playing just about every game out there. I'm hard-pressed to find any significant injuries that kept him out for a long time. But he gets that year deal, $10 million, $9 million of it guaranteed. And I was kind of looking through his stats here. He's got to be, and this isn't even saying this with a ton of Husker bias. Like, if you just match him up with some of the other players at his position, at that linebacker position, he might be one of the most underrated players. And I could say that, as an NFL fan, and I can also definitely say it as a Husker fan. This guy only has 1 Pro Bowl appearance, which my jaw kind of hit the floor. I knew he was somewhat underappreciated. For him to only have 1 Pro Bowl appearance seems outrageous to me. I mean, this guy, when you really look at it and break down his numbers, we're talking about Hall of Famer numbers. And if you don't believe me, I just encourage you to go check out what he's able to do and how consistently he's done it. And you might actually agree with me that this guy has a phenomenal career, and 1 Pro Bowl just kind of says a lot about what his appreciation level has been. Tampa Bay certainly appreciates him, and that's why I wanted to shout it out, right? They gave him the 1-year deal. He's coming back for another. They make $9 million of that money guaranteed, $10 million deal. But again, let's just go through his stats here. So 198 games played, and those games played started 198 of them. He has 13 career interceptions, 176 yards off those interceptions. He's the long being 32. He's also got this forced fumbles, 31 forced fumbles. And then you want to keep going here. Sacks, he's got 39 sacks. Combo tackles, 1,602. So you just call them tackles. Solo tackles, 1,111. Assisted tackles, 491. Tackles for loss, 169. I mean, this guy's an absolute animal. And the thing that sticks out with him is the same thing that all LeBron fans love to say, is his longevity. I mean, it is pretty remarkable how consistent he's been over and over. And if you're wondering about when was that Pro Bowl year, that's all the way back in 2015, his 4th year in the league with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it's just outrageous because it was a great season. Don't get me wrong. But when you look at a lot of the seasons around it, it seems like he should certainly have at least 1 more Pro Bowl appearance. But nonetheless, he gets that year deal and only 1 Pro Bowl. So, hoping that he'll get some more recognition, as it's hard for me to believe that, after this year's said and done, that he's going to keep going out there. But he surprised me before. But he will be a Tampa Bay Buccaneer once again. So if you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneer fan and a Husker fan, you'll get to watch Levante David at least for 1 more year put on that uniform And it's a good time to be a Buccaneer fan, honestly. Baker Mayfield, it's exciting. Mike Evans, the most consistent 1,000 plus yard receiver you're going to get on a year in, year out basis. Not sure what the ceiling is. I don't think, they're scratching Super Bowl, but I don't think they're too many pieces away from it. So again, I just like to see that for Levante David, 14 years with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on a 1-year deal, $10 million, $9 million of it guaranteed. And continuing it on here as we just kind of roam around the sports world on a Saturday, let's talk on the women's side of things now as well, as we're talking about basketball. Husker women's basketball, they did take a loss to number 2 UCLA in the Big Ten tournament, and they're not out of it yet. Now, most sites, I believe you're going to have them listed as a first 4 out, about a 10 seed. At least they did enough in that tournament play. They lost to UCLA, but again, they won those first 2 games. Hopefully that sparks a little bit of life into the men's side, as now, at least for the women's, yes, it's not the most exciting finish to lose to number 2 UCLA, but they got more to play for. And Williams, I believe this, if she can pull it off, and obviously if you're going to be in there at the 10 seed, you're going to have to pull off an upset. They could notch it as her second March Madness win, which would be a big deal for this program. And you're hoping that the men's side can take a little bit out of that. And of course, Britt Prince only being a freshman, you like what you're seeing there. And then you still got Alexis Markowski, the real veteran of that team, who is just on a daily, every time there's a game, she's just been phenomenal for the Huskers this year. And then Britt Prince, really just an exciting young player who, at this point with that team, you just want to keep pushing it as far as they can go, because you got some really good young players on that roster. And there is a sense of once you learn how to win, you just keep winning. And the only reason why I say that is because I've seen Nebraska football be in a million close games. And there is something to that where you almost have to start winning those close games before you truly believe that you're the better team and that you are going to go out there and win those games. You can tell me I'm wrong, but again, if you watch Husker football long enough, up until about last year, that was a massive problem. It didn't matter if it was the number 1 team in the country or the worst team in the country. If the game was close, people got tight. It just was uncomfortable. People didn't trust themselves, maybe trying to do too much. Once you can instill that this is the norm, this is what we do, and hopefully that's what Nebraska women's basketball is getting out of this year. And again, it's, you're not shooting for a 10 seed, but to get in the door is always something worth to be celebrated. And you do got some really good talent on that team that in years to come should only get better. With that being said, we'll go ahead and throw it to break here. We might have to put in an extra break just to get everything caught up on time here for that next high school basketball game. So don't go anywhere. Ticket Weekends, Harrison Arens going solo all the way up until that 4:15 tip-off down there at the vault with Nick Sander, Jay Foreman. Talk to you guys on the other side.
Spring storms can unfortunately lead to power outages. While LES line workers go out in the storm, you can stay in, but you can also help by reporting your outage right away online at les.com/report.
Hi, I'm Jake from Lexington.
I'm Ellen from Ogallala.
My name's Ray from Sydney.
Hello, I'm Jenny from McCook.
Ryan from Lincoln here.
And I'm Steve from Omaha.
And we've all got one thing in common.
We all love trucks.
Which means we all want to win one of the 8th grade 2025 Ford F-150 XLT trucks in Trucks and Bucks from the Nebraska Lottery.
So I guess that means we have 2 things in common.
Well, I love playing Trucks and Bucks.
3 things in common.
And we're all from Nebraska.
Sounds like 4.
And I think the gray color of the trucks this year is beautiful.
5 things. Guys, I just want to go to a Nebraska Lottery retailer, buy some tickets, and start playing today.
There's 6.
I like turnips.
I guess we stop at 6.
Trucks and Bucks, your Nebraska Lottery's most popular scratch ticket is back. Top prize odds are 1 in 336,000. Ford F-150 is a registered trademark owned and licensed by Ford Motor Company.
Are you a skilled mechanic looking for your next big opportunity? Constructors is hiring. We're looking for experienced mechanics to join our family-owned team. We offer competitive wages, great benefits, brand new service trucks, OEM-level diagnostic software, and career growth opportunities. Positions include lead and A-level mechanics for our shop and multiple field technicians. If you're driven and ready to grow with a company that's been around since 1908, apply today at constructorslincoln.com.
Rico here with HIS Auto Care at 70th and Van Dorn, letting you know HIS is a great place to bring your vehicle for service. With superior service bumper to bumper, we'll treat your vehicle like it's your mother's. Doesn't get any better than that. So call 402-488-8934 and HIS Auto will make you glad you did. 5% off, mention this ad, and for sure your mother will be proud you called. 402-488-8934, HIS Auto Care, 70th and Van Doren. God bless you.
Load up on meat and more this spring at the Mercado by Certified Piedmontese. This week's special through March 18th is 15% off Wickster seafood, 25% off Meat Mitch spices and sauces, corned beef for $9.99 per pound, and discounted Reuben brats while supplies last. Locations at 84th and Havelock, 30th and Yankee Hill, and now 85th and Old Cheney in Lincoln, or 168th and Maple in Omaha. Get to the Mercado today for the best meat in town.
Attention Nebraska sports fans! Are you ready to take your skills to the next level? The Army National Guard is looking for leaders who are dedicated, driven, and ready to make a difference. Join us and gain invaluable experience while serving your country with a flexible schedule, competitive benefits, and a chance to build a strong future. Learn more at nationalguard.com/Nebraska. Live here, serve here. The Nebraska Army National Guard, guard the good life.
Back to the Ticket weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back in Ticket Weekends. Harrison Arens on the ones and twos. 402-464-5685. Again, 402-464-5685. That is the Starter Heyman text line. If you guys want to join in, we're going to keep sticking with it. Since it is state high school basketball, let's talk about the men's side of things in terms of Husker hoops. We talked about the women's side, how, they took that loss to number 2 UCLA, number 2 in the Big Ten tournament, UCLA, but they're still set themselves up with enough regular season play to where most places got them as a first 4-in team. So as long as they should be able to hold on to that, likely a 10 seed, I think their odds are pretty good. But of course, we'll have to wait until selection day to see if they go ahead and pull that card. But nonetheless, let's talk about the men's side, as they're in some real danger. Clearly, the regular season play, even with the win to Iowa, they're not getting in. At least the way I see it, there's no way, no shot. So they're gonna have to go play Iowa, which I know they're favored for, but you know what? They're favored for Minnesota at home as well, and that one didn't go as expected. At one point, being down 19 before they just barely fought back, clawed back, and almost won it. But Minnesota was able to escape the vault with a win, the last team Nebraska faced at home. And now you got Iowa. This is a game where, for obvious reasons, you want revenge. The last time you played Iowa, you should beat them on their court. You were up by 15, and similar to what we did to Minnesota, they came all the way back after maybe we took our foot off the gas. The only difference is that Iowa came back and won it versus Minnesota. We came back and then fell apart again down the stretch. Tip your cap to Minnesota as well. They made some crucial threes down that stretch to do just enough to win it. But this is a game you absolutely need it just for revenge purposes. And then also, when you look at the Big Ten, you got to remember what these teams added in here. The Big Ten conference tournament, it's not an automatic invite just because you're in the Big Ten. You look at the bottom. Rutgers conference play 7-12, Minnesota 7-12, USC 7-12, Northwestern 7-12, Nebraska 7-12, and then Iowa 6-13. You lose to Iowa. That's another team who's 7-12 in that group. Penn State 6-14. They got one more game left on the season. Or actually, 6-14. I think I'm not even sure if Penn State. I'll have to double check on that real quick. Yeah, Penn State is done with regular season play, so they don't got another opportunity to improve their Big Ten conference play record. But again, going back to the rest of it, and then of course Washington, the bottom of the Big Ten this year at 4-15, which is really tough because you look at some of these teams. You lost to Penn State, you lost to Minnesota. You lost to Iowa. I mean, these are teams at the bottom of the Big Ten where if Nebraska men's basketball is ever going to make that jump, you've got to start taking care of business, especially when you're at home. I can, when you get a desperate Penn State team and you're on the road, I can see it a little bit. The better teams are more often than not still going to go out there and win those games and put doubt in a team like Penn State's mind early. But unfortunately, I just think the way Nebraska's offense is limited this year, they win a lot of games versus good teams with their defense. You can go back to that Michigan team as an example. I know they lost versus Michigan, but they held them under 50 points. So it's a little bit hard to believe that Nebraska wasn't able to win that game. But again, it's the offense that has been such a limiting factor. So when you're playing teams like Penn State, You're playing teams like Minnesota. It's not so much, those teams are just much more likely to be in it because Nebraska's hung their hat on defense all year. Not sure if it's always been intentional to hang their hat on defense, but that's been the thing that allowed them to compete against good teams. UCLA is probably one of the best examples of what that defensive package looks like when everybody's clicking and in sync. One of the bigger wins for Nebraska. Creighton, I would love to say the same thing early in the year, but Creighton, for whatever reason, that day versus Nebraska, despite being at home, just took a three every single time down the court. Completely played into the hands of Nebraska. Nebraska wanted to protect the paint. Creighton said, okay, we'll shoot from three, which fine, makes sense. But it got to a point where it's like, if you've missed your last 10 threes, maybe you do need to find ways to counter it. They never did. Creighton obviously got better throughout the year. You can make an argument that Nebraska is just still kind of ebb and flow. I don't want to say they got worse because I don't think that's true, but I can't certainly say that Nebraska men's basketball has gotten better either. Bryce Williams has certainly gotten better throughout the course of the year. Or maybe he's just decided that he has to take control of some of these games. But this is game versus Iowa that you absolutely have to have. All that yapping just to say Nebraska basketball's on the clock, and they absolutely need to beat Iowa. Not only to keep the season alive, but just for pride at this point. It's a rival. You should have beat them when you were on the road last time. You get them in the vault. It's the last regular season game. You need to win that. Not only, set yourself up, give yourself a chance for the Big Ten tournament play, because there's still some games left to be played. And why I brought up all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 12 teams with potential of one of them also being 7 and 12 after their last regular season game. There's no guarantees right now in this stretch of games. So if you don't beat Iowa, there is a chance that you're not even in the Big Ten tournament, and then the season's over. And then you got to end the season on a tough losing stretch to a rival, missing out on even the tournament play. And that's just kind of the unfortunate stakes that this program's put itself in. And this isn't me calling anybody out. I think as hard as it is to say, this team has at times outperformed, I think, my early on expectations. I think we're getting to a point where record-wise, pretty close to what I would have pictured. I thought 20 would have been fantastic from Hoiberg, and considering what they lost with the rink-masked injury, losing the superstar that was K-State Tamanaga. I mean, we got to think here for everybody who's just so gung-ho on wanting to move on. What does that look like before? Fred Hoiberg, believe it or not, has the best record within his first 6 years at head coach at Nebraska than any other coach before him. And that's with what was a disastrous COVID year. That's when we had Brant Banks, offensive lineman for the University of Nebraska, playing Nebraska basketball just simply for the numbers. All right? Those were his rosters early on. And you're telling me this guy has the best record out of the first 6 years than anybody before him. That's not to slander any of the coaches of the past. That just says pump the brakes before you assess him and want to move on. Because every time we've moved on, it hasn't gotten better. Maybe a tiny bit, but this is actually the best it's been. And it shouldn't be, we should all clap and be happy with where this program's currently at, but it just should keep a footnote in your mind that it's been way worse before. And I think why the frustration level gets so high at times, somewhat similar to what Tim Miles had after he made that March Madness run with Ron Petaway. He's like, once you get there, now the expectations are real, and they should be there. But when I look at this roster, in particular on offense, and I just see Bryce Williams having to carry so much of the weight, you really need this guy to score 25 points at a minimum versus bad teams, and 30, maybe even 40. And, double overtime versus Ohio State, even 40 wasn't enough. The offense just isn't good enough at times to win games. So unless Nebraska has a masterful performance, or someone like Burke, Berukton, Raleigh Wooster, any of the other guys that aren't named Bryce Williams or Jawan Gary or Connor Essegian, anybody else has a big night, Nebraska stands a really good chance, because they should take pride in how good the defense has been at times. Even though it hasn't been perfect, it's certainly been their strong suit. But the offense is it's desperately needing a playmaker. And I said that at the beginning of the year, and it's still true now. You watch how good Bryce Williams is, and you just wonder, how good would he be if he didn't have to set up the shot himself every time? And I mean that. Go look at Bryce Williams' highlight tapes from this season and look at how many of those shots that he's made have been off of a really good feed, or just a simple, I see you, corner, skip pass over the top to find Bryce Williams. He's creating out there for himself, and he's so good at that 6'7" frame that when he is going, you're okay with it because he just has that kind of touch and feel the same way. I'm not comparing him to these guys, but the style wise, I am. Like Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, DeMar DeRozan, hell, you can even throw in Sean Livingston. Those guys that just know how to feel out that mid-range area where that defense is going to suck in a little bit, thinking you're going to drive, and you're just cutting in off that three-point line past your guy to find that nice little open spot mid-range. And when Bryce Williams is going, most teams just have to kind of hope because it's so hard to contest with that frame and that wingspan. And on top of it, he's just incredibly efficient from there. But you still need more help than that. And I think a lot of it is, he not only needs someone to set him up at times. It's been amazing how much he's scoring, considering he's setting all that up himself. But it also just, it kind of, whole team gets stagnant. And this isn't Bryce Williams' fault. This is just a lack of, our offense isn't going. Bryce Williams, here's the ball, try to do something. There's no, not a whole lot of passing. Yes, we'll run an action to get him the ball in some sort of matchup. But for the most part, it's watching Bryce Williams go. And that's just, it's tough to get that team chemistry going where everyone feels like they're involved and everyone feels like, the next shot might be mine and you get ready. You just see a lot of passiveness. And even a guy like Sam Hoiberg, who I really enjoy his game, he's a good three-point shooter. There's times I want to see him be more aggressive. Berkay Berdukton, Joe, I want you to see more aggressive, but not from the three-point line. Go to work inside. Use your size. Great defensive player. Keep all that there. Juwan Gary, he's usually pretty good at feeling out what he needs to do on that day. Just unfortunately, at times, the offense is really struggling, so he has to take more shots that he might not be comfortable with. And then Raleigh Wooster, it's just, for him, it's just finishing. It's obviously at this point in the season, you're not going to fix your 3-point shot unless you just have a good night where you're feeling it. But for him, it's just got to work on that finishing. And that's something where I don't care what time it is. You can just do a mic and drill for hours on end and just get comfortable down there. Because he is good at breaking down that first defender and getting around him. Problem is you see a lot of those defenders when he gets there, not entirely respect him coming downhill. Unless it's a direct shot at the lane, they're pretty comfortable sitting in those passing lanes. And again, it just, that offense continually struggles to just have a good rhythm and flow to it because there isn't enough pressure offensively. There's not enough guys they're scared of. Bryce Williams, they're terrified of. Connor Seaton, if he's on the 3-point line, absolutely. But even then, he's had some slumps where teams aren't all out chasing him the same way they were at the beginning of the year. All that to say, you got one game left at home. you might as well go out there and go all out. Iowa's not any better than the team I just described in Nebraska basketball, and I firmly believe that. Their offense is really just take a ton of threes. If they're having a good night, Iowa can be a challenge. If they're not having a good night from the 3-point line, it's typically a wash. So it's an opportunity for Nebraska. Keep their season alive. Yes, Bryce Williams needs to show up, but it's been the case all year long. I don't care if it's one guy. I don't care if it's multiple guys, but there just needs to be more help out there. That isn't those 3 guys in Seaton, Gary, and Williams. So with that being said, we'll throw it to break here. Don't go anywhere. We'll keep this conversation rolling. Might switch gears, talk a little bit of NBA here since we're just in the spirit of basketball because Nikola Jokic just had one of the most historic nights you'll ever see in the NBA. So we'll talk about that next. Don't go anywhere. Ticket Weekends with Harrison Arens.
When you were a kid, clubs were cool. Robotics club and space club and stuff like that. But what do adults get? Book clubs and quilting clubs? Nah, forget that. How about margarita clubs and old-fashioned clubs? Get to Upside Bar and Lounge for the best clubs in town. Try all 10 varieties of Upside margaritas or old fashions and take home a free souvenir glass. Grab the whole crew and pair it with taco night on Mondays or whiskey Wednesdays. Upside Bar and Lounge at 29th and Pine Lake. The electrical workers of Local Union 265 are now hiring licensed journeyman electricians from $32.50 to $42.50 per hour with paid benefits. And if you're looking for a new career, they're hiring apprentices at $19.50 per hour with paid benefits. Call the office at 402-423-4497 to apply. Start your electrical career today.
For a new opportunity, check out Sandhills Global. Join a dynamic team where your skills are valued and your career can soar. We offer full-time positions with a 4.5-day work week, competitive pay, excellent benefits, and a positive work environment. From IT and marketing to sales and finance, we're looking for talented individuals like you. Apply today at sandhills.jobs and take the first step towards an exciting future. That's sandhills.jobs. Don't wait, apply now.
If you're in Seward or Milford, listen up. Select Plumbing is now servicing your area with no trip charges from Lincoln. Select Plumbing works on a variety of issues for your home and business, including general plumbing, water heaters, faucet fixture repair, underground sewer and water repairs, backflow testing, and more. Keep your property free from leaks and other issues. Call today for a free estimate at 402-560-6197. It's not just Lincoln, Waverly, and the surrounding area anymore. It's also Seward and Milford with no trip charges. Contact Select Plumbing to inquire at 402-560-6197.
There's no place like McKinney's Irish Pub for St. Patrick's Day, so mark your calendars to join in on the fun for their 11th annual Street Festival. The party starts on Saturday, March 15th, with tons of giveaways, a kilt contest, great Irish food, and green beer, and continues on Monday the 17th for actual St. Patrick's Day. Doors open for the bar at 11 a.m. on Saturday and 9 a.m. on Monday, and the street party starts at 2 p.m. both days. Don't miss out on great music and great fun with no cover charge for St. Patrick's Day weekend at McKinney's 8th and P in the Haymarket.
Did you know that AmeriCorps programs improve lives, strengthen communities, and foster civic engagement in Nebraska? For example, AmeriCorps program serving with the RISE program helps students on probation for truancy gain skills to improve both their attendance and performance in school. Discover more about AmeriCorps programs making a difference in your community at serve.nebraska.gov. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Back to the Ticket weeknights on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
All right, welcome back in. Final segment, or at least I think the final segment of me going solo before we get ready to send things over to the Pinnacle Bank Arena and down there at the Vault. Nick Sander, Jay Foreman, as always, continuing the Gall State High School hoops for us. And I should go ahead and give you a heads up as to who that one's going to be for that. I believe it is Class C2. Yeah, so Class C2, that is the 4:15 game. And Class C2 today is going to be, well, let me actually get the updated list here for everybody out there. Make sure we get this right. So Class C2 today will be, Elkhorn Valley and Oakland Craig. So Elkhorn Valley, number 4 seed, and Oakland Craig, the number 3 seed. That will be your Class C2 championship. And again, that one about 4:15, likely pregame around 4:10. Nick Sander, Jay Foreman will be calling that one for you down there at the Vault. Keep things rolling here. I mentioned it. I want to talk about NBA here because we just witnessed NBA history yesterday, or at least anybody who was aware and lucky enough to go and watch it last night. Nikola Jokic, in overtime, dropped a monster performance versus the Phoenix Suns, which the Phoenix Suns in the NBA, you almost got to feel bad for. But at the same time, I told everybody that this was terrible. When you bring in Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, to me, like, as great as all those players are, you can't just grab a bunch of great things and expect it to always work. It's a ludicrous mindset. I don't know why. I'm guilty of it too, but NBA fans in particular love just slapping together superstars and think that's a championship squad. Go ask the 76ers how that's worked. Go ask the Brooklyn Nets how that's worked. Go ask the Phoenix Suns this year how that's worked. It rarely works. You can't just slap a bunch of pieces together just because they're superstars and think chemistry is going to be 100% in loose details of other parts of the game outside of just points and jaw-dropping numbers. Like, there are real things that these players do that aren't always picked up on the box score, and some of it is selflessness. Some of it's being a role player. I mean, that's just like a reality of it, and I'm always blown away by people just being super, I get it potential-wise, but like, you got two guys of Bradley Beal and Devin Booker that are essentially the same player, and then you got Kevin Durant, who, yes, he's a great player, but he's going to demand the offensive ball as well. And if your whole philosophy is we'll score more points, that's a terrible philosophy, because when you go to the NBA Finals, you typically see those 4 teams that make it to the East and West Conference Finals are at least, and I say at least, top 10 defensively. Very rarely you're going to find a team that's middle to bottom tier. Almost never a bottom tier defense is going to make it that far. I don't think anybody, past 25 defensive ratings ever made it to an NBA Finals. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I probably wasn't alive for it, though. So this idea that we'll slap a bunch of superstars and forget defense altogether, ludicrous. All that to just, not to pick on the Suns too much though. But again, that's, they scored 141 points in that overtime loss. Problem is they have no defense. So Nuggets scored 149. And in this game though, it was a monstrous performance from Jokic. 31 points, 21 rebounds, 22 assists. That is a 31, 21, 22 day from Nikola Jokic on 45 minutes of play. Yes, I get it overtime, but that is an insane stat right there. That is the first time in NBA history anybody's ever put up a 30, 20, and 20. And I know it feels like these records just kind of go out everywhere, and let's not pretend ESPN and all these sports sites, they're really good at finding unique data that is very niche, that is obviously not going to happen very often or even attempt to be happen, but you can pick data out to make a record. This one, though, a 30, 20, 20, that's deserving of being called out, and the first player ever to do it. He is just phenomenal on a team that's really hurting this year as well. And I know their wins don't show it, but this team is not nearly as good enough in terms of depth outside of Jokic and Murray. Gordon, you've still got Brown there as well. It falls off pretty harshly after that. And I like Russell Westbrook. He's been a helpful addition, but they're going to need a lot more off their bench. And that's kind of the biggest problem I see heading into this thing. But if you're going to have a Jokic like that, you might have a chance anyways. And I don't want to talk about this because, we are getting closer to the MVP voting, and there is a chance that SGA walks out with the MVP award because the narrative, people just get tired of the narrative. And the narrative has been Jokic is the MVP, not once, not twice, but 3 times. I don't know if they're just going to go ahead and give it to him that 4th time around, because as much as, I might seem like an anti-LeBron guy, which I do want to talk about later because him and the Stephen A. Smith interactions have been outrageous to say the least. LeBron James deserves more MVPs than what he has. But years, he just doesn't get it because people are tired of the narrative. Kobe Bryant. I will argue Steve Nash, 100%, as great as a player as he was, he's had great years where it felt like it got stolen from Steve Nash, but the year that he actually won it, it felt like it got stolen from Kobe Bryant. And I do just think there is a chance where we see SGA walking off with the MVP trophy. And yes, he's an impressive player, but I just think it'd be pretty outrageous not to give it to Jokic at this point. He's literally better in every category than what he was last year on what is a roster that's arguably worse as well. When you're looking at Jokic, what he's able to do night in, night out is unreal. So I only read you that Phoenix Suns game. The game before that, he had 22 points, 15 rebounds, 6 assists. The game before that, he had 20 points, 14 rebounds, 9 assists. The game before that, he had 23 points, 17 rebounds, 15 assists. He's kind of been flirting with the 20-20-20 more often than not, which is just outrageous for any player. These are just the last 5 games, by the way, and versus Milwaukee, a team who's going to have size, right? You think Giannis Antetokounmpo, well, certainly this will be somewhat of a tough matchup for Jokic. 32 points, 14 rebounds, 10 assists. And a couple steals. I don't even read the steals and blocks in this one, but just what he does offensively is unreal. And then his 3-point percentage, just in his regular season alone, he's shooting 57%, 44% from 3. That's his career best from the 3-point line. He's actually about a 36% career shooter from there. But if you look at his last few years in particular, as he's got more comfortable kind of adding that part to his game, that number just climbs up and up and up. 8 free throws, 81% rebounds. Like I said, 13 rebounds, averaging 10.5 assists, averaging 2 steals, and about 3 turnovers a game on top of 29 points. And then you go over to SGA, who is also a phenomenal player. Don't get me wrong, but when you just compare him side by side, SGA right now is averaging 32.8 points. So he is averaging more points by about 3. But when you go to assists, 6.2 assists, not bad. But when you look at Jokic, who's averaging 10.6, he's got to beat there. Rebounds, 5.1. Jokic averaging about 13 rebounds a game. And then you go to blocks. He's actually stealing about 1 block. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, ironically, you got the guard having more blocks. But then you have the center averaging more steals. Jokic is getting about 2 steals a game, and SGA getting about 1.5. But you can't tell me that 13 rebounds, about 11 assists, and 29 points isn't deserving of the MVP. Shai should be a clear second runner-up by no means, but we're talking about at least he would have to have 6, 7 more rebounds on a nightly basis. He would have to have at least 4 more rebounds on a nightly basis. And then points wise, he's just barely ahead of Jokic. Turnover battle is 2.6, Jokic 3.3. I'll add that final one in there to give one more point to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But to me, it's just so definitive at this point that if you don't give it to Nikola Jokic, you're just completely saying, I'm tired of the narrative. I just don't want to see it anymore. He is by far the best player in the world. And I know it might get annoying hearing that because I have this take maybe more often than I should, but it's just consistently amazing me. And for any old heads who don't like basketball anymore, and there's times I can't blame you, watching flop-offs is certainly a unique thing that's transpired in the NBA today. Go watch some Nuggets basketball and just watch Jokic. You'll smile and realize it's not all that bad. Some players still play the way we used to love and know. The favorite thing about Jokic, and for multiple players, he's not the only one that does this. Splash Mountain actually doesn't get enough credit for this too. Brook Lopez. There are guys in the league who don't actually try to flop, and it's a beauty to watch. Jokic is one of those guys where he's just going for buckets. You're never going to see Jokic go for a flop free throw unless someone did it to him beforehand, which is actually the only time I think I've ever really seen a flop from Jokic that wasn't sarcastic. He just goes for buckets. He's not going for free throws. He's just going for buckets. And he could go for free throws. But I mean that. If he wanted to, he could play the game the same way Joel Embiid does. This doesn't mean Joel Embiid is a shady player for doing it. The refs will allow it. If the refs are going to allow it, I think it's free game for any player. I just respect that Jokic absolutely does not try to go for fouls. Like, he's just really good at finishing and getting the bucket. And if the foul comes, he'll take it. And you can make an argument that, he gets fouled a lot through games. They just don't call a ton of it because he's not flopping. And that's always something I respect. So again, if you like old school basketball, go watch Jokic. It's always, he's going to do at least 3 things in a game where you're going to just wonder, how in the hell did he see that? How did he make that? Just an unreal player, today's league. And as long as he stays healthy, which the way he plays, he probably will stay healthy for quite a bit longer. I know he's bigger, but again, he's not out there running 100 miles an hour, jumping 50 feet out of the gym. He's very just, it's like it's a weird version of Tim Duncan almost, and how he plays basketball. It's like if Tim Duncan had, ball handling and some 3-point shooting. You'd have to put Tim Duncan, like if he grew up today, I'd imagine he could be some sort of a version of Jokic, but even then, I'm not entirely sure. Just an unreal player. So again, that's my final thing I'll probably say about Jokic until we get to the MVP race. If you haven't watched him, you just have to check him out. Again, he broke not the record, but he set a new standard, being the first player ever to score over 30 points or 30 plus, and also grabbed 20 rebounds and 20 assists in a single NBA game. So I wanted to bring that out there because that came across my radar last night. An incredible performance from what I think is the best player in the world today. Talk about LeBron James a little bit here, just because if everybody's been watching the NBA news world, he got ousted by LeBron James live in public. Not like the mics caught any of it, but Stephen A. Smith did address it. If anybody's familiar with Stephen A. Smith, especially in the NBA world, his whole shtick is takes. That's what he does. He gives takes, he gives opinions, and that's what he gets paid for. And he's really good at articulating his opinions. That's why he gets paid tremendously for it. You can disagree, you can even hate some of his opinions, but he's good at what he does. Just can't kid yourselves there. He had a section on his show or podcast, I'm not entirely sure what you would exactly label it, with Stephen A. Smith, where he was talking about Bronny James and that Bronny James should not be in the NBA, that, it's an awesome moment and something that he was very, I don't want to say negative, but positive about it. He thought it was an epic moment in sports history, that opening night when Bronny James got to play alongside his father, LeBron James, in that Lakers arena. But his final point was basically, that was great, but that should have been the only game. He's not ready. And he's not wrong to say that. I don't think that's an outlandish thing. You can maybe have some problems with how he said it, but even then, I don't think he attacked him personally. I don't think he attacked his family personally. I just thought he was saying that Bronny is not ready for the NBA. And LeBron James had some exceptions to that, basically called him out live on court and really got in his grill about it after one of their games in the Lakers arena. And it just kind of caught me off guard. I'm curious what you guys think. 402-464-5685. If you're aware of the Stephen A. Smith LeBron drama, you can tell me who's in the wrong. I clearly think that it was a little bit bizarre from LeBron James to call him out like that. That is Stephen A. Smith's job. I thought Stephen A. Smith was actually right as well. Be careful what I'm saying here. If I ever run into LeBron James, he might chew me out. But like, you do just look at Bronny James' stats, and this isn't just an attack on Bronny James, because what he does in the G League is really good. That's the whole problem with why I can't believe LeBron James got so upset, because that was a big part of like what Stephen A. Smith was trying to say. He never said, and he made it clear, I'm not saying he won't ever be an NBA player. He's just not ready yet. And we'll talk about some of his numbers as well. We'll pause 10 seconds for a station identification right here on 93.7 The Ticket.
Lincoln's home for sports talk on the FM dial. Also online at theticketfm.com. On the internet. KNTK FM Firth, 93.7 The Ticket.
All right, welcome back in. So again, I want to give you guys some of these stats on Bronny James just to like reiterate what I thought Stephen A. Smith was saying, who, again, this guy, he's got a lot of hot takes. You're not going to agree with all of them. That's a lot of the sports media business. For how much you talk, you're never going to be 100% all the time, because things are going to be hindsight 2020 and you might look back. But this was one where I thought he was absolutely right. So we'll go his NBA stats first, because this is the one that people really like to dunk on him. And sometimes, they are just being mean. Sometimes, like in Stephen A. Smith's case, just being real. So not minutes. So this is his entire NBA career so far, right? Per game average, this is what he's doing. 1.4 points per game, a field goal percentage of 25%, a 3-point percentage of 20%, 0.4 rebounds, 0.4 assists, 0.2 steals, 0.1 blocks. Like, that's clearly not a guy who's ready for the league. And that's all that conversation was. So then when you go to the G League and you look at what Bronny James is able to do, it's another story. And this is where I just do not understand, when you have guys in particular like Bronny James, who nobody is calling out to be a bad player, but just a guy who, when he was in college, had a serious health risk that certainly didn't help his career in basketball down there at USC. What does help his career is getting some more reps for all the time he lost, because again, it's, I just imagine genetics wise, he's a good athlete. You watch him on the floor, he doesn't look like he's not athletic enough to play. It just looks like he's missing his groove. In the G League, what he's doing on about 30 minutes of play, he's getting about 14 points. Field goal percentage still not great, 36%. But again, it's getting better and better as he's played in those G League games. I think the problem is like, if you're going to pull him up, pull him down, that's where that strife comes from, is when you're constantly moving a guy who's catching his groove in the G League, and now you think he's ready because he had one good G League game. So you bring him up to the NBA, and then he has another game where he has 0.4 assist, not even 0.4, 0 or 1 assist. However you get to 0.4, you're having more zeros than you are ones. I mean, it's just unreal. So the best thing for Bronny, which is totally reasonable thing to say, and again, why I thought this whole thing was insane when I kind of saw that reaction from LeBron James, and maybe we don't know the full story. LeBron hasn't commented on itself, but if everything that Stephen A. Smith is true, it's like, what are we mad about? You got your kid drafted. Nobody's saying that was a terrible thing to do. It was an awesome moment in sports history. It's not the first time it's happened either. The only thing people are saying is Bronny James might not be ready. And when you look at the stats, like, that's not a crazy leap to make. It's just looking at the numbers and being rational. And I just, I was just blown away by this even being a story, and by Stephen A. Smith not only talking about it on his show, but then seeing the comments as well. I mean, the people who love LeBron James, sometimes a little too much, because like, this is one where just a reality check. Nobody's saying Bronny James can't play in the NBA. Everybody's just saying right now he doesn't look like he's ready. And if you look at the numbers, that verifies. And again, you go to the G League, he's fine. 14 points a game. That's going up and up and up. He's taken about 12 shots, so that's not bad there. 3-point percentage, again, not good, 21%. And this is why that G League is going to be good. But I'm telling you, all these numbers have been getting better as these games have been going on. You look at the steals, 1 steal, only about 3 turnovers. And again, this is 30 minutes to play now. Rebounds, about 4 rebounds. For me, the biggest thing is just like the shooting percentages. It's not that the guy will never be able to play. It's if you're going to play in the NBA and you're going to be an undersized guard, you have to be a good shooter. Anything less than a great shooter, an undersized guard, unless you are Drew Holiday level defense, who also had an offensive game to carry him, it's brutal out there. Unless you're Kemba Walker, whose offense is incredible, it's brutal. Look at what happened to Kemba Walker as soon as he got an injury. It just quickly falls off for those shorter guards. Like when they lose a step, it's really, really tough. A guy like Steph Curry is almost ageless at times. Like he's certainly losing speed as the years go on, but he is such a good 3-point shooter that you have to be glued to him all the time. So he can be one of those undersized guards that can continue to thrive. Damian Lillard is one of the worst defensive point guards and has been for a long time, but because he's such an offensive, I don't even want to say a instrument, because what he does is he just gets hot and starts bombing away. His shooting's incredible. A little bit different than Steph, but the trend is with Kemba, with Steph, with Dame, think about these really short guards. Okay, maybe not them. Rajon Rondo. Rondo was one of the best playmakers we've ever seen. And Bronny isn't super short, but he's not a very good shooter. And defensively, he hasn't done enough to make him like this defensive stopper. So yeah, he's just not ready for the league yet. And that shouldn't be a controversial take. So again, that's my 2 cents on it. I was just kind of surprised. That's what caught the media over this week. And just a little bit surprised by LeBron James' reaction. Again, this is all off of the Stephen A. Smith show. There's no actual audio that I know of between LeBron confronting Stephen A. Smith after that game. But just nonetheless, my 2 cents on it. Very surprised by it nonetheless. We'll go ahead and throw it to break here as we are getting ready for some more state hoops. We got Class C2 next. That is the 4:15 p.m. game. We'll have a little bit of pregame before we get there, though. And again, that one today for that Class C2 game, as I pull up my sheet here, is going to be Elkhorn Valley versus Oakland Craig. So again, number 4, Elkhorn Valley, and number 3, Oakland Craig, facing for the Class C2 state championship game down there at Pinnacle Bank Arena. This is Harrison Arens. That is my little solo segment for Ticket Weekends here. We'll get ready to throw it to Nick Sainer, Jay Foreman out there at Pinnacle Vault Arena right here on 93.7 The Ticket.